Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Esperanza, your host, and today we're diving into an incredible story of transformation, resilience, and purpose with Melissa Sandoval, founder of Intuición Cafe. After nearly a decade in the newsroom covering emotionally challenging stories and experiencing severe burnout, Melissa realized her intuition was guiding her toward a new path. That whisper of her soul led her to reconnect with her roots and share the powerful stories of Colombian coffee farmers while building a business that prioritizes ethical sourcing and sustainability. In this episode, Chapter 19, Following Your Intuition, Your Small Biz Journey, Melissa shares how she made the courageous leap into entrepreneurship, the lessons she learned along the way, and how following her intuition transformed both her career and her life. Whether you're navigating a big transition, struggling to align with your work or your purpose, or just looking for inspiration, this episode is packed with insights on listening to your inner voice and building a business that feels right for you. Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Melissa. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're here for chapter 19 of Small Biz Diaries. We're talking all about following your intuition in your small biz journey, what that meant for her and what that might mean for you. I find it super helpful from a relatability standpoint, just to hear people's stories and their journeys of how they've gotten to where they've gotten to. And specifically in this topic, Melissa went from being in the newsroom, which she'll dive into a little bit more, to starting her own business and now having Intuition Cafe, and how that's evolved into a coffee cart in the California, San Diego area. So thank you for being here, Melissa. Let's get started. I can't wait to talk to you about your small biz journey.
Thank you so much, Esperanza, for having me here today. And I'm such an honor to be able to tell my story, to connect with you, and to relate with other small business owners who are probably going through the same change that I went through, not only on my career, but also like on a personal level. And yeah, it's all about following your intuition.
Yeah. So walk us back to when you started off in the newsroom. Did you have an idea that you would end up having your own business? Like, obviously, it's a very different industry and like career path.
Absolutely. Yeah, not at all. I never had that idea in my mind since I was a little, ever since I can remember. I think I was 7. I would always tell my mom and my family and all my friends, I want to be a news reporter. I've always been a person who's been always very, like, since a child, very intrigued, asking a lot of questions, talking a lot. And I just felt in love with the industry and with the communication career. So ever since I can remember, that was like my childhood dream. So I was born and raised in Colombia, moved to Miami, Florida when I was 10, migrated with my mom. We are political asylum seekers. That's where I went to school, grew up mostly there, did my high school, my college, and I got my bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism with a minor in photography, pursuing that dream, pursuing that life that I really wanted, and my passion for storytelling. And I moved to Colorado after graduating right straight from college. I think I only had one job in the Miami market. It was only like about a year, but moved to Colorado really quickly. I was there for 2 years where I got my first gig as a MMJ. They call it MMJ, so it's a multimedia journalist. So multimedia journalist means that you're doing everything. Basically, you're your own camera, you're recording, you're editing, you're writing, you're conducting the interviews, you do your own hair, your own makeup, you record yourself on camera, and you send out the package either live or back to the station for the newscast. And all of that in a matter of 8 hours. So yeah, it was a lot, and
Wow.
we were probably doing the job of 2 or 3 people, but it was my dream, and I said yes. And I wasn't gonna say, I was not going to give up. I was like, I gotta do what I had to do, and I eventually, like, I'm gonna climb up the ladder, um, and just take it by there. Eventually, after 2 years in Colorado, it was a harsh winter for me, especially coming from Florida, and the market was already small for me. And so I decided to make that jump into San Diego, in the San Diego area, which was a bigger market and where I was also going to have the chance to do English news stories. So in Colorado, I was
Mm.
only doing Spanish, and so when I moved here to San Diego 6 years ago, I transferred here. I had already been to San Diego before, had already been in love with the city. And yeah, the transition was smooth. It was a bit different because obviously brand new city, brand new job, new people. The 2 times I moved, I did them all on my own, no family members, just getting out of my comfort zone without any knowing anyone or having anyone there to support me.
Yeah.
But I was just following that dream, and again following my intuition back then that was my calling. And so I stayed here in San Diego for 6 years working in this news industry. And I think a little bit after the pandemic, I think it was around 2020, where I had an awakening call. I started to realize that the lifestyle that I was having and that I was living, it was unsustainable. It was
Mm.
not only emotionally draining, physically draining, um, and it was deteriorating my health, my
Yeah.
lifestyle, and it was just so harsh. Like here in San Diego, covering, for example, the border issues, so going and talking to the migrants, to the kids, and you don't realize it, but you're intaking all of those news, and you're intaking all those stories, and they're not easy stories to be heard or to be told.
No.
So those things, the Black Lives Matter protests, I was there covering all the tear gas exposure, covering fires, covering breaking news, running around from one story to the other. And I realized that I was always on stress mode, on that fight or flight mode, where
Yeah.
your nervous system is always alert and it's always on edge, that knot here in your throat where you're stressed. And little by little, my body couldn't, like, it started to show the signs. It couldn't take it anymore. Like, I started suffering from panic attacks at night. At first, I didn't know what they were. Insomnia from having off and off, on and off scheduling, because I was working the weekends until midnight, and then the week
Right.
at 9 a.m. And I also started having bad gastritis to the point where my gallbladder had to be removed in 2021. And I couldn't understand why, because I was like, I eat healthy, I exercise, this can be happening. And it was all the stress. My
Mm.
gut was intaking all the stress. So that's how I started to realize that this was not the lifestyle I wanted anymore. And I started listening to my intuition once again. And after roughly almost 9 years in the news industry, I decided to quit. I decided to no longer sign my contract and just transform my life, follow a new dream, follow a new path, just because I noticed that the other lifestyle I was doing, even though it was my passion, it wasn't fulfilling me as much as it was before. And it wasn't compensating or being healthy on my life. And
Yeah.
so many factors that go into it. I'm not going to get into
Yeah.
all the other details, but, and yeah, and that's how I listened again, once again, to my intuition. And that's why my company, my coffee business company, it's called Intuición Cafe in Spanish, because I wanted to maintain my Spanish Colombian roots. And intuition for me, it means the whisper of your soul. So it's that little voice that guides you and tells you something, but that your brain cannot comprehend by what it's telling you. You know what I mean?
Mhm. I appreciate you sharing all that because obviously it's been a part of your journey going from Colorado and even before then into California and San Diego, and it sounds like you were listening to your intuition from way back then. And you beat me to it because I was going to ask you what listening to your intuition feels like, but you already said like, it's like almost like a whispering in your soul, or that's your brain can't comprehend, and I totally align with that. And I have heard people say before that the more you start listening to your intuition, the easier it is next time when something comes up. It's almost like you listen to it once, so you recognize that same kind of like whisper when it comes back up again. For you, I'm sure, like taking those leaps of faith and listening to your intuition, it made it almost like a little bit more noticeable. Obviously, the signs were there physically, but from a mental shift, you kind of recognize that it might be time. Does that
Yeah.
sound right?
Yeah, I always believe that God times it's perfect. And there was times where I was fighting it. I was like, no, this is what I pursue. I sacrificed so much throughout my life, throughout my 20s. I moved 3 times out of my city, out of my comfort zone. I'm not going to give up on this dream. And the more I was resisting to it, the worse my health, my environment, my lifestyle got. And
Wow.
once I started asking for those little signs to the universe and to God about what move, what else, what I needed to do in my life, the more it started giving me little things. Just like I would apply to another same job, same company, but different department or different city. I would apply to a different shift, stuff like that, and it would always be a no. No, or I would always ask, God and the universe to send me little signs of like if I should pursue the other path of my business, and it always like opened the doors. It always somehow, of course, with a lot of work, with a lot of discipline, but it would always like open up the doors towards that path. So I've always been a very intuitive person, and even like in my sleep I would see, like it sounds weird, but even like visions of like what I was not aligned with, and what my future would look like. And deep inside I knew that I deserved more and that I deserved a better lifestyle and I deserved something different than what I was doing, even though that was my comfort zone. And even though it was, yeah, I realized that I was feeding my ego by what I was in the news. And I wasn't really aligned with my purpose or serving my purpose.
One of the biggest things I'm hearing, and also I've learned from experience too, listening to my intuition or just like trying to understand what the next step is being open, like being open to the possibilities. I feel like there's a difference between trying to listen to your intuition, but being so focused or having such tunnel vision in terms of like, well, this must be the path, versus being open to the possibilities of something else that you haven't even thought of, or something that is not something that you would have thought of before. There's just so many different things that could come up for you if you stay open, which is what I'm hearing is like you, as much as obviously you said you had to unpack that a little bit. I've worked so hard, I've sacrificed so much. You went through the motions of having to like work through that, but that is I would say a part of like making such a big change in your life, right? Is like working through those emotions.
Yeah, 100%. And I can tell you that I was actually in therapy, and my psychologist also actually helped me to let go of that. Because I would tell her, I'm like, I'm letting go of my childhood dream. I'm throwing away all the sacrifices, all my dreams. She made me realize, like, no, you got to change your chip. Like, you're not giving up. You accomplished it. You went there,
Mhm.
you did that, been there, done that. Now you're moving on into your next chapter of life. Like you did it. Like you're not giving up, and nobody can take that away from you. Like you'll still be that Melissa that was a journalist, that had her awards, that was known in the community for helping, for telling their stories, for covering that breaking news. But it is okay to evolve. It is okay to change. It is okay to change your priorities and to want something different. Now, what's not okay is to stay there if you're not happy, because
Yeah.
it just starts showing. It literally starts showing. And I felt that I was becoming a person who I was not. Because also, if you think about it, the news are always negative stories or sad or
Mm.
tragedies. And that's what I was consuming. And that's what I was bringing out of my body and my language. Always interviewing people during their most painful times of their lives, and I was just consuming all of that, and without even knowing, like you become that, and I was
Yeah.
like, who is this person? I'm not like this. I'm not this, like unhappy or sad or pessimist person that I was starting to be.
Yeah, and shout out to therapy because I just think that obviously reflection comes in different ways for different people. Like some people journal, some people go to therapy, some people meditate. There's so many different ways that you can reflect, but I think that clearly it was a big component for you to be able to unpack all of those things and realize that it's okay to, shift that mindset and let go of that dream that little Melissa had to be in the newsroom full time for the rest of her life and be open to the change that was in front of you. So, how did the coffee component come in? Let's talk about that because
Yeah,
obviously, like newsroom, coffee, not really correlation,
I don't know.
but I'm excited to hear about, obviously, the storytelling component, which I
Yeah,
think is a big part of the things you were able to take from the newsroom and put into your business.
100%. Yeah. So I've always been a coffee lover. I'm actually drinking one of my coffees right now.
Yay, shout out.
Thank you. So growing up in Colombia and with my mom, oh my God, my mom, I think she's like the most coffee addict person ever. She could drink like 5 coffees a day. I'm like, Mom, you're about to have a heart attack. Anyhow, so growing up in Colombia, we always grew up drinking coffee, black coffee, and we call it tintico. It's like a small, kind of like a cortado size, but without the milk. It's just black. And every time you will go to your friend's house, family member, the first thing you're offered when you go into their house or living room is ¿quieres tintico? ¿Quieres un tintico? You want a little bit of coffee. And so grew up drinking coffee. Of course, it's an acquired taste. It's not something you drink immediately out of nowhere. So in 2021, during the pandemic, I remember my husband and I, we went back to Colombia to visit our family because we're both from Medellin. And I remember telling him, I was like, I want to go to the coffee fields, do one of the tours. They started becoming very famous, very touristy. And I wanted to see the process and I wanted to see how it was made because I had never seen that. I mean, I was used to drinking the coffee, but never knowing like the story behind it. So we went to one of the fields, we explored and did the whole tour, but I immediately fell in love with those stories of the coffee growers, the agricultures. I was fascinated. I was like, can't believe this is what they're doing. And it takes 2 years for the coffee plant to grow and to actually get that cherry and that seed and be able to like it's a whole process. It's like people don't know about it. And as I started talking to them more, of course, me asking a lot of questions, I started to realize that they were not being compensating first the fair wage that they should. A lot of big companies, exporting companies in the US and other around the world are getting and like working these agricultures hard for their product but not compensating them correctly. And so I started like researching and diving in and I was like, this is fascinating. Like this is how the idea came out. I was like, I want to interview them and I just want to tell their stories, like storytelling. Of course, in the company where I used to work for, that's not news. That's basically storytelling and profile story. And for the San Diego, California region is I interviewed the first farmer when we went there to Colombia in the coffee fields, and I opened up a YouTube and I edited his story. I remember recording everything, not everything, some with my phone and some with like my professional camera. And I edited his piece and I just put it out there. It was something that it was fulfilling for me too. Instead of just doing news and harsh stories, it was different. It was something that it was mine, and I was so proud of like sharing that part of my country, like sharing the little history. And so after that, when we did the story and everything, my husband and I, we started thinking of a bigger way to make an impact, and we said, why don't we just bring their coffee and sell it and give them some profits? Sure, let's buy a bunch of coffee. And how are we doing this? I have no idea, but let's take it to the US and let's sell it. And I'm going to like start my own brand. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I didn't know anything about, I don't know, the permits, like the health permits to import the coffee, all the permissions, like all the logistics, how we're going to transport this, creating a logo, creating a brand, creating a website. I was like, it was just so out of my comfort zone. And it took me almost 2 years, 2020, actually no, 1 year, to launch the business because I was still working full time and I was doing all of this on my days off. So no days off, working Monday to Monday, just building that company, creating the website, doing all the getting all the permits, like finding out the way that we were like building or creating we paid off obviously a graphic designer for the back design, for the logo, for the web, but it was just like this, like meetings through Zoom and going back and forth and copywriting the logo and launching this, doing that. And I put myself a deadline because I started to notice that it was just taking time and time and time. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. 11/11. That's going to be the launch date. 11/11/2022. And I was like, this is it. Like, there's no more time. I got to get this out. And I did. And we launched it on 11/11/2022. So it's been over 2 years. But that was the business model. initially. It was just selling the coffee bags, giving 10% back to the coffee growers, the agricultures back in Colombia for every purchase of the bag, and telling their stories on our website and on YouTube.
Mhm.
And that's how it started. And it went great. Feedback was amazing. The coffee, everyone loved it. Created, our community. I started going to different collaborations and events here and there promoting the brand, and while all of this, while I was still working in the news industry. And there was a big factor in between that I had to pay because I was a talent and I had a contract under my other previous job. And because I was part of being their talent and I was in front of the camera, I was not allowed to promote or to shout out or to give any promo announcement of any kind. Not a restaurant, not my hairstylist, not my own
Mm.
business. And that was a huge challenge for me because how am I like, everything was like word of worth. And I was like, how am I supposed to grow this brand and this business if I cannot even talk about it? So
Yeah.
everything was through its own Instagram, through its own website. My friends knew about it, but everything was like secretive. And I was not able to be the face of the company or show my face on camera or Instagram or anything. And it was just like the product. And I knew from the beginning that people don't connect with a product. People connect with
Mm.
people. And I knew that I needed to come out of that shelf to be able to like expose who was behind the brand, other than the coffee and other from the coffee growers. And yeah, so that was 2022. We launched, we did everything. And my contract was coming up in April of 2024. So again, set another deadline to myself. And I was like, okay, April 2024, I'm quitting. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not signing. And again, we gotta make it work. I don't know how. I'm gonna take a leap of faith. And so, yeah, by 2024, on February, we launched the coffee cart. And the coffee cart came along because when we were going to events and trying to promote the coffee,
Mhm.
people started asking, the public started asking for cappuccinos, lattes, macchiatos, all those sort of drinks that you can't really do with just black beans. And I was like, I
Yeah.
wish I could give that experience to the client, but I don't have the ability because I don't have the equipment. I don't have the ability to do it. And so I was like, let's do it. Why not? Get myself in so much debt, buy a coffee cart, buy all the equipment, got myself into so many courses, certified myself as a barista, got into financial and a lot of like marketing and how to run a business. It's still a learning experience, but we did that and launched the coffee cart in February. 2 months later, I quit my job.
Amazing. Yeah, yay. I love it. Like you knew nothing about being a barista, coffee, like there was no previous experience, which is like such a beautiful example of how, I mean, quite honestly, a lot of us are just figuring things out as we go. Like
Yeah.
there really is a lot that we didn't get taught in school or that we didn't learn from a previous job that could help us. Obviously, there are things that help, like for example, for you, storytelling and being able to just like bring the story of the Colombia and Colombian coffee to the United States, but still, like, there's a lot more that goes into a business than
Oh
just that. So, yeah, well, congratulations for hitting 2 years
yeah.
recently. That's, like, so big and so great to celebrate, but then now, especially now, being able to align more with your business because you can pour more of you into it now that you have it full time. It's full time now, right?
100%. It's full time. It's my main source of income. And now I just ask myself, why did I do this earlier? Like, I'm so much happier. I have so much freedom. I feel like I'm aligned with my purpose. It gives me so much gratitude and satisfaction to go out there and give people a little taste of Colombia, and the reaction that we get, and people love the coffee, and being able to like just share that with the public and with everyone out there, and not having to be controlled in other ways of like who I was and what I was doing, because believe me, I was kind of like living two lives. I was like
Yeah.
the news reporter Melissa, and then my the real original Melissa, which of course came aligned and together, but it wasn't out there 100%. But now with the coffee and with my business, it's like it's who I am. It's like what my soul desires, and I can basically realign my lifestyle to my career instead of
Mhm.
aligning my career to my lifestyle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like a really good example of just how you kinda just have to jump into the deep end sometimes with things, especially because, I mean, with running a business, obviously, it sounds like your husband was also, like,
Yeah.
a big supporter and helped a lot, but still, it's like you're running things and you're figuring things out a lot as you go, so trying to continue to follow your intuition while aligning yourself with what works for you now that you don't have to, like, ask someone else or, like, rework your mindset to be like, "Is this gonna fit in with that brand or that news story?" Whatever it is. So you had to, like, shift that a bit more to really kind of craft your business idea and the coffee cart and everything the right way.
Exactly. Yeah, and
So
it just takes me again one more time out of my comfort zone, like you said, like learning new things. I'm still learning. We're still like figuring things out. Again, my husband has been my biggest support. I couldn't have done it without him, because even though I wanted, and even though like I knew deep inside I wanted this, he was the one who pushed me, and he's like, okay, let's do it. I'm going to be here with you. He did the course with me. He helps me with the finance, with like all the logistics from importing the coffee. And, we complement each other as a team, because I'm more of like the person doing all the contracts and the behind the scenes and doing the social media and talking to the clients. And he's the one doing like the logistics, the finance. But he, not only did he follow me from Denver to San Diego, so that was like a huge, like act of love from his end, from his part. Because when I moved to San Diego, we were doing long distance, and I
mm.
moved to San Diego, and we waited a year, and then he followed me and moved here for me. And then a few years later, I go, I'm not happy, I'm gonna quit. And he's like, I got you, don't worry, let's do it, we're gonna figure it out. And so yeah, we both work together, so it's like a wife and husband duo where we do the events together. Sometimes I also hire freelance baristas when he can help me all of the events, because of course it's a lot, and I learned so much from them too. So little by
Yeah.
little growing the business, and it's been so fulfilling. And yeah, I just can't wait to see where it's going to take me.
I know, me too. I'm excited. I need to make a trip to San Diego to one of your events, or at some point you need to do events other places as well.
Yes.
So we'll have to figure out where where that goes. So we talked a little bit about how obviously being an entrepreneur, small business owner has its ups and downs, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. What would you say has been, now that where you are now with your business after all of the things you've gone through the past 2 years, what would you say is something that you're struggling with now? We like to have, raw, transparent conversations on Small Biz Diaries just because obviously I feel like we're always seeing some behind the scenes, but it's always better to hear it from firsthand, like what is the toughest thing for you? So what would
That's
you say that is for
Yeah,
you right now?
that's a really good question. Let me think. Okay, two things, or actually one thing for business related and one struggle personal related.
Perfect.
So, business related, I think in the coffee industry, especially when you don't have a actual physical coffee shop, is closing the contracts with clients all through email exchange or
Yeah.
communication. It's hard because if you think about it, you're going to cater or bring them the coffee shop experience to one of their most important dates. It could be like their wedding, like for a bride, that's their most important day of their lives. Or it could be another event, an office, corporate. Those are little, I don't want to say easier, but not as sentimental as like weddings or other type of events. But that's one thing I started noticing. It's like, how do you gain that trust from a client that hasn't even seen
Mhm.
you, who hasn't even tried your coffee, and yet you're asking them to close a contract to cater that for them, without even like seeing you. So
Yeah.
that communication there, it's key. So that's like,
I hadn't even thought about that.
yeah,
It's
uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I offered calls and FaceTimes, and some people ask me for tastings. which I offer the bottle lattes, but that's as much as I can do. I can't really like give them the whole tasting experience unless you book us, unless you book
Right.
us. So that from the business aspect, it's like one of the biggest, I think, like not struggles, but like challenges. And then on a
Yes. Yeah.
personal level, I would say finding that I don't want to say life work balance because I do have it, but it's so different when it's your own company. Like when I was working in the news industry, if I was on vacation, because I was always on call for breaking news, so I still know life balance.
Oh,
But when I
wow.
was on vacation or when I knew my weekends, sometimes I had my work phone with me in case they would call me for an emergency or breaking news. But I was off and I was disconnected. But with a business, it's like you can't. You really like
There's always something to do.
there's always that because people don't know. And then, but it doesn't bother me. That's the difference. It doesn't bug me.
Mm.
It doesn't bother me. But I just started to realize that even though I'm on my off days, like yesterday on a Sunday where I didn't have any coffee event, I got inquiries, I got emails, and I was like, I was like closing my eyes, I was taking a deep breath, and I was like, I'll get on it tomorrow. This could wait. It's not the end of
Mm.
it's not the end of the day. It's not gonna no one's gonna die, you know?
Yeah.
So finding that balance of like, okay, I could answer this in a few hours. I could get to it later on. But still you're the head, you're the business owner, and if you don't do it and if you're not on top of it, nobody else is gonna do it. So finding that balance of being able to like take my days off and finding time for myself, not always be connected, that because again,
Hmm.
there's so much more than just serving the coffee. There's so much that goes behind the scenes. So that's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
finding and still like walking through that path of like that balance.
Yeah, and it's so important because as business owners, because there's always something to do, it's so easy in turn to then get burnt out
Mhm.
or get like very uninspired or start thinking about things very like robotically, on autopilot that you're not really fully being
Present.
present with your
Mhm.
clients or with your story or with your purpose of what you're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And so that's, I mean, like a very good thing to bring up as like a struggle because I think that so many people do go through that and you have to find a way to balance to find something that works for you to disconnect or like feel okay like you said for you like you're like okay this is something that can wait like so thinking about things that way sometimes but yeah no thank you for sharing that that's so real it
Yeah.
is so real when it comes to
It's something that it's a how do you say it? Like a price we have to pay as small business owners because we wear so many hats. We are doing everything. I mean, thankfully, I have my husband who helps me too, but we are in charge and running everything. Like, who's HR?
Mhm.
We are. Who's
Yeah.
social media manager? We are. Who's I don't know, marketing? We are. Who's the content creator? We are. Who does the packaging? Who goes to the mail? Who goes talk to the client? Who does the event? We do. It's like, whoa, people now realize like it's much more harder, more work than what it looks like on social media. It's not as pretty as it looks. But again, I wouldn't change it. I'm still I always tell my husband it's like what I used to do compared to this is nothing. Like I got this. Like
Yeah.
I can do
Yeah.
like
Yeah, no, I love it. It's true. It's just such a different perspective when it
mhm.
comes to that running your own business and doing something for someone
Yeah.
else.
And you always,
Um,
as a small business owner, you always have to ask yourself, why are you doing this? The why
mhm,
component, it's so important because when you start doubting yourself of like why you initiated that project or that business or that, small business thing is why are you doing it? Okay, you're doing it because of your why. Come back to it. And my husband reminds me of that. He's like, would you rather be right now doing this, and that, or how you used? And I'm like, hell no. And then I come back to
yeah,
my why. It's like, okay, you're right. I'd rather be here right now.
yeah, that's such good advice to like really try to break that down or sit down with yourself when you're trying to figure out whether it's a side hustle that you want to ultimately have it be your full-time job or whether even you're a business owner right now and sometimes you lose motivation or just like you're feeling like a bit stuck. Like all of those things, sometimes it's like you said, all about just looking back and thinking about like, well, why am I doing this? Like what's the purpose of this? Why am I coming back to this? And so, thank you. Yeah, I love how you gave a little bit of advice there with your struggle. Well, I love everything that you've shared with us only because I feel like it speaks towards your journey, but also the intuition component of it all as a small business owner, which again, I think is something that isn't talked about a lot
Yeah.
because you're sometimes, thinking about what is someone else doing to get to where they've gotten to, or sometimes you're like comparing yourself to others, or there's imposter syndrome. There's so many other things that can come up. But when you can kind of try to ground yourself, as hard as that might be at times, or like emotional as it may be at times, ask yourself the hard questions, you could get somewhere. Like life could show you where you're supposed to be going.
Yeah,
And I think that that is so beautiful and again, very unspoken.
absolutely. As long as you're open to listening to your intuition, to going through the pain that it's going to throw at you to then flourish and come up all the way up again, it's so worth it. It is so worth it. And I always repeat this mantra to myself in the morning: whatever or what doesn't serve me, wait, hold on. What doesn't serve me does not align with my life, And it's
Mm,
like, again, if it doesn't serve a purpose for you, it would find its way, and there's no room for that. So you can just like let that slide through and just follow the journey that that your heart, that your soul, that deep inside that you desire.
Beautiful. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I appreciate it so much. And I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing all that you shared and just being so open about your journey because obviously it's so distinct, so different to what you thought you were supposed to be doing and what you're doing now.
Exactly.
And then I also want to give you the opportunity to let us know, let our listeners know how we can support you. So I know you have your coffee cart, and obviously you have that for availability for bookings in San Diego or in the surrounding areas.
Mhm.
But let us talk us through more of other ways people can support you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're here in San Diego and you want to get the coffee shop experience where we bring, like all the catering and specialty drinks to you, then obviously through our website, intuicioncafe.com, and all the information is there on how to do it. And if you don't live in San Diego or LA or the surrounding areas, you can always purchase our coffee bags also through our website. With the purchase of the coffee bag, 12-ounce bag, you're supporting also the families, the coffee growers, and the industry and the culture back home in Colombia. We give 10% back of our profit. So you can buy the coffee bag online and we ship nationwide. And we also have gift sets, little mugs, and like other articles and other products there. But yeah, if you want to try the coffee, and if you have, it could be a Chemex, a regular coffee machine, or an espresso machine, or French press, you can totally make the coffee.
Amazing. And obviously, if you resonated with Melissa and her story about Intuición Cafe, please follow and support her as well. I'll make sure I leave her all of her links on the comment or like in the description. So please feel free to connect with her. I'm just super happy that you were able to share your story with our community, or Small Biz Diaries community. We're all about getting, real, raw, and honest about what's behind the scenes.
Thank you. No, thank you, Esperanza, for this space, for allowing me to be transparent and open. And yeah, this is actually the first time I share the full story of like everything. So a lot of people know it, but again, close friends, families, but to be able to expose it like this, it kind of takes a weight away from of my shoulders. It's like, again, I'm coming out of that shelf and I'm like opening up and exposing the brand and aligning with my purpose. So thank you. I'm so, so grateful.
Yeah, yeah, we're putting it out in the universe, and we can't wait to see what other things you come up with and is in store for your 2025. I'm super excited. So no, it was an honor for us to have you here and to have you share that story. Anything else or any other like things that you want to mention in terms of upcoming events or advice or anything else that comes to mind?
I think I just want to close it up with like what I always tell people about like the intuition, because of course not everyone's going to open a coffee business, but for me, listening to that intuition, I always say this mantra that says follow your intuition and it would guide you to your greatest purpose. And that's what I did, and that's what I tried doing every time. And the moment I get tired of this or not happy about it anymore, let's see what's in store.
Yeah, no, that you have so many beautiful quotes and tidbits that I cannot wait for people to hear. I do want to say before we close the episode, for anybody listening, Melissa just reminded me of this beautiful, or like this quote that also goes with the intuition component of it all. I don't know if you've watched this TV series, Melissa, but it's Ted Lasso, like the soccer show. It's like getting really popular, and they're coming out with a new season. And there's a quote that he says, and I'm going to read it. It says, "Just listen to your gut. And on your way down to your gut, check in with your heart. Between those two things, they'll let you know what is what." So I had to bring that up because there's so many different ways we can interpret like intuition or trying to listen to your intuition, kind of like you said, like the whispering in your soul. And there's so many different ways to find the way that it's communicating with you, like find that connection to that and start just taking some little whispers with you and being open and figure out where it's going to take you. But
100%.
just wanted to leave that as well for people. But again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I can't wait we'll have to do another episode at some point, see where you're at later. But thank you again.